Welcome everybody to Lessons from the Field. As you know, this is a interview series where we bring in somebody who has a passion for pharmacy or pharmaceutical sciences, typically alum or friend of the college. And today we're very honored to have Jennifer Splawski, who is a 2010 graduate of our PharmD program. She also has a master's in clinical toxicology from the University of Florida. She's board certified. She's an emergency medicine pharmacist and clinical coordinator at McNeil Hospital, where she also is director of their PGY1 residency. And we have a series of questions we'll ask Jennifer today. And I know that she'll be providing a lot of great experience and advice from her time since she's graduated for the benefit of our students and alums. So Jennifer, welcome, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
And maybe we could just start, Jennifer, with if you could just walk us quickly or briefly through what you've been doing since you were at UIC. Start with
Sure. So after I graduated UIC, I finished my PGY1 residency at the University of California in San Francisco. And then I started on a role as a clinical pharmacist at North Shore University Health System at Glenbrook Hospital. And then through that, I was able to take on an opportunity to help start emergency medicine pharmacy services there, and then eventually become promoted as an emergency medicine clinical pharmacy specialist. And I was there for about 3 years before I saw an opportunity at McNeil Hospital to actually develop an emergency medicine program for pharmacy staff. So I took a leap of faith and then applied, and I've been at McNeil for about 7 years, maybe a little bit less. And throughout McNeil, I've done a lot of different things. I started out as a clinical pharmacist in the emergency department, grew to be a clinical pharmacy specialist there. And then I took on a role as an interim manager during our Tenet to Trinity transition, where we are now part of Loyola Medicine. And then once our transition has become complete, I'm now our co-clinical coordinator for the hospital.
Okay. Wow. So you have probably a lot that you can share to folks that are either interested in emergency medicine, which of course is up and coming. I think there's a lot more hospitals that have implemented pharmacists in the ER. And I know a lot of our students are interested in that as a career, but also because you're kind of in the beginning throes of management as clinical coordinator, and maybe have some insight there as well. So our students often ask about kind of the details, what you do on a daily basis and over the week maybe, but what is your common kind of day-to-day activity that you do?
So my role is pretty interesting since I am split between the two areas. So I spend anywhere from 40 to 50% staffing in the emergency department. And then the rest of the time I spent in a clinical coordinator managerial role. So while I am a manager of the hospital, I'm in charge of hiring and performance reviews of our pharmacy technicians. I also contribute with the help of my co-coordinator for performance reviews for our pharmacists. Something that takes up actually a lot of time is making sure that the department is staffed and scheduled appropriately, and making sure all those swaps are approved and people show up on time, doing payroll, all that interesting stuff. In addition, as part of this role, I'm our medication safety pharmacist and the representative for the hospital on a regional level for Loyola Medicine. So each day when I am in a clinical coordinator role, I review the medication safety events of the hospital and see what we can learn from those events and how we can fix things from a systematic approach. So whether it is collaborating with other departments and seeing what we can do, or if it's an internal medication error, how can we fix this to prevent future errors from happening? But then on the managerial side, kind of tracking and trending errors to see, one, is it a systematic issue or is it an employee issue? And if it's an employee issue, I do develop performance improvement plans. I do coaching to make sure that our employees are working at the top of their license, whether it's pharmacists or technicians. I attend a lot of meetings. So some committees that I'm involved with, but not all. Code Blue Committee, Stroke Committee, Diversion Committee. And then I work on a lot of long and short-term projects in various areas of expertise. So emergency medicine projects, toxicology. I do a lot of work in pediatrics and neonatal patient population as well. And then on the flip side, on the days where I go into staff as an emergency medicine pharmacist, similar to being a clinical coordinator, every day is very different. So you kind of walk into the ER, assess what the bays look like. If there's an active emergency, you kind of jump in and see what they need help with. I think one thing as a pharmacist, you can help them with pharmaceutical needs, but then one of the things that you really need in a true emergency is somebody to just know where things are and like run and get things to like help facilitate proper medical care. So if there's no pharmacy things that are needed, maybe a nurse needs another IV set. You can go help them grab that to help them not leave the bedside. Um, and then I'll assess the tracking board and see, are their patients getting discharged? I'll review their discharge prescriptions for accuracy and counsel if needed. I'll verify any orders for any patients. And then I'll start reviewing patients on the tracking board based on acuity. And then I'll go to their bedside and ask them any questions or interview them as necessary and make any recommendations to the medical team. And then I answer a lot of drug information questions from physicians, nurses, techs, paramedics, anybody that is working in the ER. And then depending on what comes in through the day, I'm pretty active with the emergency department. So I mix TPA, I participate in Code Blue emergencies, anywhere from our neonatal patients to our adult patients, prepare meds for procedural sedation. And then every day is just really different depending on what comes through the door and how acute our patients are.
Yeah. Wow. What a wide range of things that you're involved in. It sounds like it reminds me that sometimes in smaller hospitals that you have a lot more opportunities to get involved in things that you might not otherwise in a larger place. And there, especially since you're part of a system, you're also getting that system perspective as well. So really sounds like a great opportunity. So looking back maybe at your time as a student or thinking about students who might be interested in whether it's emergency medicine or some of the coordination or drug safety kinds of things that you're doing, or really just generally, what should pharmacists or pharmacy students pay attention to while they're in the program to better prepare them for roles like that you're in?
What's interesting is when I look back at my pharmacy school career, I think about like what classes did we think were like, the classes that were super interesting were our therapeutics classes. But then some of these other classes were like, well, maybe we can use this to bump up our grade a little bit or what we can do. But I think one of the classes that students should really pay a lot of attention to is drug information. I think the tools that the drug information folks at UIC give us are incredibly invaluable, but I also do think that that's a class that we don't realize how valuable it is until you're in the field. I think pharmacists are our biggest drug information resource. And as a preceptor, I think one of my biggest pet peeves is when a student answers your drug information question with an up-to-date answer or quotes up-to-date on their presentation. What I want to know is what makes pharmacists stick out is any physician can look up to date and get that drug information question. But you, as a good pharmacist, looking through the literature, seeing if the statistical analysis was done correctly, assessing for bias, choosing the correct literature to answer that question is going to make you a much stronger clinician than doing exactly what your physicians just did before they came to your desk and asked you the same question.
Yeah.
So I think definitely paying much more attention to drug information.
Yeah. No, that's so true. So given your, I guess, 10 years or so since you graduated, what's your proudest accomplishment, or where do you think you have had the most impact?
I think definitely starting the emergency medicine pharmacy program over at McNeil Hospital. I'll be honest, I thought it was definitely a risk trying to do that because it was a community hospital that didn't have a lot of clinical pharmacist support. We had one really strong clinical pharmacist in the ICU, But the way that the emergency department was structured was we had an EMR system at that time that was very siloed. And the EMR did not, nobody had access to it unless you're an ER provider. So the pharmacist had no idea what ever happened in the ER. And our automatic dispensing cabinet was also on 100% override. So
Mhm.
pharmacists didn't really have oversight of the medications. So going in to the ER in a completely clinical role where I didn't have any order verification duties at that time, and just to be there as clinical support, the nursing staff had no idea what to do with me.
Yeah.
So some of the nurses thought that I was there to police them. Other nurses were thought that I was there to be another nurse, just a different nurse. And then I did have a lot of incredible support with our physician staff, though, because a lot of our physician staff did their residencies at academic medical centers with emergency medicine pharmacist presence. So they really missed that collaboration. So as soon as I came through the door, they're like, "Oh, we need you for this. We need you for this." And I was like I don't even know where to sit yet. Like, I need to figure out where to sit before I start doing all the things you need me to do. But now, after being there for many years, we've increased our coverage to 7 days a week, 10
Mhm.
hours a day. And I have two other colleagues that work in the department with me. And then I have a third colleague that we're actually mentoring to have more of a role in the emergency department that does not have residency training. So I think that's a great accomplishment that we went from me coming in there in the wild, wild west to now having a pretty established program where if there isn't a pharmacist, then they call us like, "Where's our person? Are they coming today? I need them."
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we need for all pharmacy services. And so congratulations on putting that together. I was going to ask you like how much coverage do you have now, but you answered that. So um, really, I mean, that shows the value of the service when, the physicians and other healthcare providers are demanding that it be there all the time. So maybe like changing gears just a little bit, more personal or kind of professional basis. For those who are listening, our students and others, what would be advice that you would have, like best tip maybe that you've heard from others or that you would like to pass on for success in your work life, or maybe it's personal life, or maybe the balance between work and personal time. So thoughts there?
So I think that something for your maybe your work life and part of your personal life is to try to do something off your prescribed path. So when I entered pharmacy school, I had a very prescriptive vision of what my future is going to look like and what it should look like, and I did all the things that I thought that I needed to do to get there. However, as we know, things change the more experiences that you have. And I remember when I was choosing rotations my fourth year or my third year going into fourth year, um, the last rotation I had to choose, in my opinion, I had nothing. I had no options, nothing to choose. I was very disappointed. And I chose a rotation at a hospital that it was their first year taking students, a preceptor that no one's ever heard of, and it was in a cardiac thoracic ICU. And I tried to avoid critical care medicine all throughout my entire pharmacy school career. So I was like, well, like it's only 6 weeks, it's not too far from home, let's do it. And it was actually one of the best pharmacy school experiences that I had. My preceptor was an incredibly wonderful mentor. She was one of the smartest people that I've ever worked with, and it was incredibly challenging, but it was so rewarding. And I don't think I would have realized how much I liked critical care medicine unless I would have done that rotation. And it really opened my eyes to something different where it wasn't part of the plan. And then I think just moving on in my life, so at McNeil Hospital a few years back, one of my directors quit without much notice. And I took on this role of interim manager of the department, and I didn't have any support or direction. And I think another piece of advice for success is that if you're scared, it's okay to take the next step. So I realized that after being in that role for about 2 years, that I really love leading a team. And I love watching people grow and then giving them those tools to be successful in their job. And then also to be able to completely change a culture of a department and make it a very like nurturing environment that people really want to come into work.
Mhm. Wow, yeah, that's great advice. I mean, yeah, staying open-minded about opportunities and experiencing new things, and then taking on new challenges. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So I think I have an idea of some of the things that you might respond to in this next question. I think you're obviously very passionate about the work that you do in the ER and the new roles that you have in management. But what else excites you about pharmacy, or that you feel are things that you're looking forward to in the future as the field advances?
So I think is providing the opportunity for students to continue to grow their education. So starting this residency program really is within my goals of creating this nurturing environment where students and residents and my own staff can really learn and grow. And I do think that we do need postgraduate education for resident or for pharmacy students because that's the way that our profession is moving, and we need to be competitive, especially when you're applying for positions. Um, Having a residency will allow them to become board certified. They'll be able to practice at the top of their license. And then I'm really excited to start a program and be able to provide those opportunities. And I do think there's just not enough PGY1 residency programs out there. And there's a ton of candidates that are outstanding candidates. And unfortunately, not everyone matches. So
Yeah.
if we open up a few more spots, then some of those candidates will be able to have that opportunity.
Yeah. So where are you in that process? Have you already started the residency, or are you still in the development phase?
So we are currently recruiting for 2 residents. They'll start in June 2021.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so we'll be starting our interviews actually at the end of January, beginning of February.
Okay, good. Well, I hope you have some great candidates, including some from UIC.
Of course.
And if you need any help recruiting, we can certainly get the word out for you. So maybe just as a last question, um, any other advice you have for, especially for pharmacists that are just recently graduating, who are still trying to find their way? You know, you've obviously been out a little bit now, and you've had some great experiences. And so for those that are just starting that path, any other advice you'd have for them?
I would say to not be discouraged if your first job isn't your dream job. I think that you can try to make it your dream job. So, unfortunately, the market in Chicago is saturated, and not everyone graduating from pharmacy school or from residency is going to have that opportunity to become a clinical pharmacy specialist at an academic medical center right after residency or right after graduation. Those jobs just aren't as plentiful as they used to be. So I would say, even like as a manager looking through applications, there's a ton of amazing candidates, but I have one job. So what can you do when you come to the interview? You need to see also if you can fit in this organization's culture and look at the people that you're interviewing with and the hiring manager. Can you work with this person? Can you work with these people? Having a good team around you and a good support system. Like healthcare can be extremely challenging, especially in an area that I practice in emergency medicine. Like you need a really good support system and you need a good foundation. That sometimes those things matter more than your dream title right off the bat. And then also see if there's opportunities for growth within the organization. Is there somebody that can mentor you? Is there more of a senior specialist that can help you grow into the position that you want to? Maybe you can't work in the ICU because you don't have the qualifications that they're looking for, but maybe you can rotate in those areas in the weekends or in the evenings or on holidays where you can start building up that clinical practice. And then if somebody does leave that position, you might be the next candidate that's available to take that role. Or maybe when that next dream job comes up, you've already filled your CV with all these experiences at your current job that will allow you to be able to be that ideal candidate for the next round.
Yeah, great advice, Jennifer. Well, thank you for taking time to have this talk, and I know that your advice and comments are really going to be valuable to our students and also our recent graduates. It's great seeing you again, and until next time, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.